This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information and to find out how you can volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by J.A. Carter. Orthodoxy by G.K. Chesterton. Chapter 7. The Eternal Revolution. Part 2. This, then, is our second requirement for the ideal of progress. First, it must be fixed. Second, it must be composite. It must not, if it is to satisfy our souls, be the mere victory of some one thing swallowing up everything else, love or pride or peace or adventure. It must be a definite picture composed of these elements in their best proportion and relation. I am not concerned at this moment to deny that some such good culmination may be, by the constitution of things, reserved for the human race. I only point out that if this composite happiness is fixed for us, it must be fixed by some mind. For only a mind can place the exact proportions of a complete happiness. If the beautification of the world is a mere work of nature, then it must be as simple as the freezing of the world or the burning up of the world. But if the beautification of the world is not a work of nature, but a work of art, then it involves an artist. And here again my contemplation was cloven by the ancient voice which said, "I could have told you all this a long time ago. If there is any certain progress, it can only be by my kind of progress, the progress toward a complete city of virtues and dominations, where righteousness and peace contrive to kiss each other. An impersonal force might be leading you to a wilderness of perfect flatness or a peak of perfect height, but only a personal God can possibly be leading you, if indeed you are being led, to a city with just streets and architectural proportions, a city in which each of you can contribute exactly the right amount of your own colour to the many-coloured coat of Joseph." Twice again, therefore, Christianity had come in with the exact answer that I required. I had said, "The ideal must be fixed," and the Church had answered, "Mine is literally fixed, for it existed before anything else." I said, secondly, "It must be artistically combined, like a picture." And the Church answered, "Mine is quite literally a picture, for I know who painted it." Then I went on to the third thing, which, as it seemed to me, was needed for a utopia or goal of progress. And of all the three it is infinitely the hardest to express. Perhaps it might be put thus: that we need watchfulness even in utopia, lest we fall from utopia as we fell from Eden. We have remarked that one reason offered for being a progressive is that things naturally tend to grow better. But the only real reason for being a progressive is that things naturally tend to grow worse. The corruption in things is not only the best argument for being a progressive, it is also the only argument against being a conservative. The conservative theory would really be quite sweeping and unanswerable if it were not for this one fact. But all conservatism is based upon the idea that if you leave things alone, you leave them as they are. But you do not. If you leave a thing alone, you leave it to a torrent of change. If you leave a white post alone, it will soon be a black post. If you particularly want it to be white, you must always be painting it again. That is, you must always be having a revolution. Briefly, if you want the old white post, you must have a new white post. But this which is true of even inanimate things is in a quite special and terrible sense true of all human things. An almost unnatural vigilance is really required of the citizen because of the horrible rapidity with which human institutions grow old. It is the custom in passing romance and journalism to talk of men suffering under old tyrannies. But in fact men have almost always suffered under new tyrannies, under tyrannies that had been public liberties hardly 20 years before. Thus England went mad with joy over the patriotic monarchy of Elizabeth, and then, almost immediately afterwards, went mad with rage in the trap of the tyranny of Charles I. So again in France the monarchy became intolerable, not just after it had been tolerated, but just after it had been adored. The son of Louis the well beloved was Louis the guillotined. So in the same way, in England in the 19th century, the radical manufacturer was entirely trusted as a mere tribune of the people, until suddenly we heard the cry of the Socialist that he was a tyrant eating the people like bread. So again we have almost up to the last minute trusted the newspapers as organs of public opinion. Just recently some of us have seen, not slowly but with a start, that they are obviously nothing of the kind. They are, by the nature of the case, the hobbies of a few rich men. We have not any need to rebel against antiquity; we have to rebel against novelty. It is the new rulers, the capitalist or the editor, who really hold up the modern world. There is no fear that a modern king will attempt to override the Constitution. It is more likely that he will ignore the Constitution and work behind its back. He will take no advantage of his kingly power. It is more likely that he will take advantage of his kingly powerlessness, of the fact that he is free from criticism and publicity. For the king is the most private person of our time. It will not be necessary for any one to fight again against the proposal of a censorship of the press. We do not need a censorship of the press. We have a censorship by the press. This startling swiftness with which popular systems turn oppressive is the third fact for which we shall ask our perfect theory of progress to allow. It must always be on the lookout for every privilege being abused, for every working right becoming a wrong. In this matter I am entirely on the side of the revolutionists. They are really right to be always suspecting human institutions. They are right not to put their trust in princes, nor in any child of man. The chieftain chosen to be the friend of the people becomes the enemy of the people. The newspaper started to tell the truth now exists to prevent the truth from being told. Here, I say, I felt that I was really at last on the side of the revolutionary. And then I caught my breath again, for I remembered that I was once again on the side of the orthodox. Christianity spoke again and said, "I have always maintained that men were naturally backsliders, that human virtue tended of its own nature to rust or to rot. I have always said that human beings as such go wrong, especially happy human beings, especially proud and prosperous human beings. This eternal revolution, this suspicion sustained through centuries, you, being a vague modern, call the doctrine of progress. If you were a philosopher you would call it, as I do, the doctrine of original sin. You may call it the cosmic advance as much as you like. I call it what it is, the fall.